Hi, Ellis. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see you and to have you here. Welcome to Defining Success.
Thank you.
Everyone, this is Ellis McCue. I am so honored to have you here, Ellis, and to share all of the incredible work that you have done, that you're continuing to do with all of the listeners. Really quick question, because we had a little pre-chat. I know that you were just in the city and you saw the Rockettes.
Yes.
Yes.
Incredible.
Right? It still is?
Yeah, it was amazing. 100 years later, it was absolutely incredible. Definitely worth the watch.
That's so good. I wanted to hear that because, I was been wondering, I haven't been in like 3 or 4 years, so I've been curious if they still have that same magic, and they do.
They
Awesome.
certainly do. I love it.
Well, with that said, I'm just going to take a moment, jump in and read your bio so that everybody can hear about all the incredible work that you do, and then we'll just get started. How's that sound?
Sounds amazing.
Great. Okay, let's go. All right, everyone, get ready because there is a lot of stuff in here. So
this may be a very boring businessy bio, by the way. I promise we can spice it up.
Yeah, no way. We are going to spice this up, but there's no spice needed. This is incredible. Okay, here we go. 8-year CEO of venture-backed, high-growth, direct-to-consumer companies with experience in highly complex, multi-category operating environments and deep expertise across product, growth, marketing, strategic partnerships, strategy, supply chain, operations, and financial strategy. Successfully raised $55 million in venture funding as sole executive across seed A and B rounds for food tech, CPG, and health tech companies with experience in complex funding structures and early stage M&A. Elle is a dynamic executive who drives top performance out of remote and local teams through accountability and trust, anchored on her unique background across technology, operations, finance, and product. She has dedicated her career to building best-in-class companies focused on performance, mission, and culture, and invests her spare time supporting the startup ecosystem to help others build resilient businesses and raise capital. A well-known CEO in the D2C consumer and food beverage space, Ellis has been featured as Real Leader TM and repeated featured back speaker at the lead. I'm going to start this over and I'll fix this because I stumbled. We will fix this. But a well-known CEO in the direct-to-consumer and food and beverage space, Ellis has been featured as Real Leader and repeated featured speaker at the Lead and the Future of Food Technology. Her companies have been ranked as Best Places to Work and a 16 Marketplace 100. I need to hear about that. What is that?
A 16Z Marketplace 100, so a ranking list of the fastest growing marketplace companies by Andreessen Horowitz, the Ventures Group. And so I've had the privilege of having multiple rankings on fastest growing and sort of they climb to build there.
And you're also recognized in Deloitte Fast 500 in 2023 and Inc. 5000 in 2023 and 2024. Okay. Ellis was nationally
We've got a lot
ranked,
of awards here.
as top 15 CEOs for startups and was awarded Washington Business Journal Women to Watch as a founding voice in the food as medicine movement. Thank you for that, by the way. We will talk. Can't wait to dig into that. Ellis has been a top 25 consumer health tech executive and at the Food as Medicine Summit, working directly with the Tufts University Food as Medicine Institute and Nourish Movement. Food as medicine for a GLP-1 world. Yeah. Prior to working in the venture-backed space, Ellis enjoyed 10 years in Fortune 500 companies, leading high-growth new verticals at ZX Ventures, Gap Inc., and Deloitte Technology, directly managing $1 billion plus P&Ls in multinational operating environments. Ellis received a BA from the Johns Hopkins University and lives in Washington, D.C. Yes.
Yes. We did it.
Wow. Just a few accomplishments.
It just makes me tired.
Well, I will tell you, I feel really invigorated by all that. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that in your bio because I hear you, it feels businessy and it's a lot to read, but it's it's all so worth it because it gives us the full picture of everything that you have accomplished and clearly where you're headed towards. But it does really make me excited to ask you a question that I was really turning in my head last night while thinking about today, which is, Ellis, you clearly have a incredible work ethic. I've listened to a bunch of your other interviews, and you are driven and you are purposeful in your drive. And I'm wondering, can you sort of reminisce on where that work ethic came from?
Whew, yes. I mean, I am super driven and my mind doesn't stop. I think, that's not everybody. And I feel so lucky because my brain goes in 1,000 different directions at any one time. It can be super overwhelming. And it's taken so much practice for me to not overwhelm everyone that comes in my path with this brain. But the work ethic definitely comes from my parents. I mean, I think like most people who have like that insane drive and that insane work ethic, it comes from like something that's deep ingrained when you're a child. My parents were entrepreneurs in their own right. My dad was a dentist and my mom managed his practice. My mom also had a master's degree in psychology from the 70s. So like a classic sort of 1970s marriage where she was, had a master's degree, could have had her own career, but it was the 70s. So she managed his office. And I like look back at the way that was sort of positioned to me as a kid. And I think I never really understood the trade that she made in her own personal career to do that. But on the positive side, they ran a great business and they taught me so much about serving your community. And I grew up in a relatively lower income area in Massachusetts where they did a lot of, he was a dentist. He did a lot of like public service and public health work at the same time as doing like commercial work. And so always about how do you be a leader in your community and how do you build a good business that also does service? How do you lead the people on your team and your staff? And how do you be a good manager? And how do you always run with a lot of integrity in the things that you do? And I learned that from both of my parents. And, every single night they would work in the office after, like in the office in our house, after we'd eat dinner as a family, we'd go to work. Every single Saturday I'd be stuffing envelopes, every single weekend we'd be working together and it was always a family business. And I think you see that with a lot of people that grow up out of that family business mentality is that they're conditioned to work and you're conditioned to work and want to do it for like the betterment of your family. And so, how that translates to me as an entrepreneur, 40 years later, oh my God, I'm turning 40 this year, 40 years later, is that, I always think about maximizing my time and I always think about every hour spent and how do I use it better and drive myself forward, my community forward, my team forward, my family forward. And I do like to take a break now. I think I wasn't as good at taking a break for a lot of my career, but now I have the ability to sort of take a step back. But it really, that hustle is ingrained from the beginning. And I feel lucky. Like I feel lucky that it was given to me,
Yeah, it's cool. Thanks for that. Cause it's cool I love that you were a part of the family business and you were all a team. You were all kind of in it together. And you're right. It's super inspiring. I mean, did it feel as a child growing up, did it feel like you mentioned your mom and sort of how you never really wrapped your thoughts around the sacrifices that she made for her? Like as a kid, were you recognizing that, or is that in hindsight that you think about that now?
I mean, I think it was honestly both because my mom is like, she's so smart and she's always been so smart. And so she would tell me these stories as a kid of the sacrifice that she had made. And so I was growing up with the stories, but I didn't understand. Right? Like she'd always say, I could have had a career in Washington. I'd be like, my mom could have had a career in Washington. And you just sort of like repeat those things. And then only when you are the mom that's not having the career in Washington or you are, do you really understand those things. But I think both of my parents did a phenomenal job of the legacy that they wanted to leave behind and like just being so smart about how they taught us about their own careers and what they wanted to do and the sacrifices they made. My dad was like a physicist in college. How did he end up as a dentist? Well, it was the 70s and that's what his dad did. And these are the sacrifices you make. And so it's interesting because I often think about how that pulls forward into this moment where entrepreneurship is everywhere. You can do anything. I have 2 little kids. I'm constantly thinking, both girls, I'm constantly thinking about how I'm going to impact my daughter and her perception of her worth and what she wants to do and everything like that. I probably think about it too much, and I'm probably actively teaching lessons a little bit too much, as a lot of like women and moms of my generation are. Not every moment needs to be a learning moment, but I definitely think, you have these moments where it's like, okay, what's the stamp that I'm going to leave? And what's the thing that I repeat over and over again? And the thing for my parents was that everybody pulls their own part, and everybody is part of something, and that we are building something together, and like, it's your job, your responsibility as part of the family. And I think that it's good because it creates the drive, but it also creates the feeling of community, and that it's a part of my identity, not just to work hard, but work directionally and like make the world around me a better place and a more cohesive place for the people that I work with, that I touch. So I wouldn't trade that for anything,
Yeah, absolutely. That's so great. And your daughters are how old now?
I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. So in my opinion, the perfect split, but still very, very young. And I learned something new about being a mom and a wife and a partner and a CEO like every single day, which is just incredible. I have a funny anecdote. Eve Rodsky, who's like an incredible female entrepreneur. She's a lawyer turned, I suppose you'd call it activist now. But really talking about the shift in a marriage that happens when you have children. She has this incredible methodology called Fair Play, where it's about understanding roles and relationship. And I was so lucky to be on a podcast with her right before I had my daughter in 2019. And I said to her, I was like, oh, well, my husband and I, we have it figured out. Nothing's going to change when we have our baby. And she was so kind. She was so kind to me. And she was so like, I'm sure that's true, but for others, this is how it works. And I have looked back at Eve and what she's built, and the way that she talks about equality between, genders and equality in a marriage, and she's created a framework for folks to talk and facilitate conversation in a different way. She's doing great work. And I look back at that moment where I was just such a know-it-all, and she treated me with such grace. And I just think that's the funniest thing to look back at, for sure.
Yeah, which is also, that's so great, because it also is, it's very much like parenting, because there's going to be times, there probably already are, where, one of your daughters may say like, well, this is how I'm going to do it. And there's those moments you just have to say, yeah, okay. And sit back and let the lessons be learned.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when you're sort of like I don't want to ever use the word control freak, because I don't think I'm a control freak, and I would never say I'm a perfectionist. I've been told that's not true. But I think like when you're someone who likes to control the variables and like sees the playing field, it's really hard to let the people you love make mistakes. Right. And it's so hard to take a step back and say, that's not my role, and I want to let these things play out. But it's also, so educational, because you don't know everything, and there's always things to be learned. And especially, with your kids, you're learning new things all the time. So I think it's that like mental presence that you have to like see the playing field, how things are going to land, but you take a step back and you let them go the way that they need to go. And sometimes it materializes that way, and sometimes it doesn't. And this is where having teams is exactly the same as having children. Like let your teams fight it out. You think you know how it's going to turn out, but you need to let them do their own thing, because otherwise you're keeping them in a artificial sort of like state where they can't make their own decisions, right? So it's a hard lesson, but an important skill.
And do you feel that you had that skill prior to having kids? Is that something that you've learned since then, or maybe even more so?
I think more so. The biggest change for me when I had children was like, I've always been somebody who is super driven, very, very hard charging, and I have like a deep EQ, right? I can read someone really easily. I've always had this special skill, and it served me so well. And what that means is on the other side of a deep EQ is you often care what people think. And you're more emotionally invested in the sentimentality and sort of the buy-in of a group than somebody who's sort of a lower EQ. And the biggest shift for me when I had my first daughter was that I still could sense and still have the deep EQ, but honestly, I care much less, because it's just like it sounds awful to say, but like every moment is so precious when you have a child. And especially like for me, I wasn't expecting to be totally floored by, my love of my daughter, now my daughters. Like I wasn't expecting it. Everyone warned me, and I was just like, that's not going to be me. It's not me. And it absolutely was. But I feel like it just made me like a ruthless in prioritization, because every minute that I spent on work was a trade-off for like a minute not spent with my daughter. And I think that, you know, when I think about my skills as CEO and a decision maker and a leader of people, it made me much, much better, because I still bring my same AQ and my still deep care for the people around me, the people on my teams, my investors, my stakeholders. I still care deeply, but now I'm able to just get through the sort of emotionality much faster and bring people together in a more direct way. And that has served me so well, because it just means we can resolve things much more quickly. We can move faster. And I think that's like the best part of becoming a new mom for the CEO suite.
That's getting through the emotionality much faster. That's right there. That's a very powerful statement, and it's a super important skill to have. And I've really never heard it put that way. So that's really that's very insightful. And I could see that just being a muscle that you may have already had, but it getting much stronger after building a family. Yeah, good stuff. So question, okay, I know that you were a performer in high school. You had a flair for drama, correct? You were.
Yes. I'm not sure where you pulled that from, but yes, absolutely. You did some deep research here, man.
Can't say specific roles, but I know that you like performing.
I do.
Which is even what I just found so exciting to hear, because it makes you even more interesting, because you're also gifted with numbers. Or I don't know if I shouldn't say that. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know if you're gifted with numbers or you're just good with numbers, but or if it's just that you're driven by it, you're passionate about it. But it's an interesting combo. All these, you know, we're just getting into it. These are just a few of the things that make you so incredible. But at what point did you transition into that you know, wanting to know more about business, wanting to understand numbers and how that all works? Okay,
so I can't believe you dug up my performing arts history. You are one of a kind. Here's the thing that a childhood in performing arts teaches you, and I will tell you, I was like never the best. I think that's important to note. Like, I think like I have a nice singing voice, I have a good singing voice. I was never going to be on Broadway. I'm a great dancer. I'm not the best dancer. I was never going to be a ballerina. And the thing that it gave me is like, I can step onto a stage of like 5,000 people with no notes, no practice, 3 bullets, no context. And I feel completely at home. Mm-hmm. And I think this is such a treasured thing. I have a friend, she's super talented. She has to like look at cue cards to make a simple presentation of something that she's an expert in. I look back, that is one of the most valuable things I have. You can throw me into any conversation, any stage, and I feel comfortable. It's also made me phenomenally lazy, because it means I don't prep for things. Because once you know that you can do that, you don't prep as much. And now I've actually started to prep in a different way, because I'm getting a little older and I need to be a little sharper. But I think that's the best thing that a performing arts like background can give you. And I play piano and I sing and all these things. Played piano historically. The other thing is, I actually think it's really valuable not to be the best, because it was never going to be a career for me. You know, so many people train their whole lives for these careers, and then they make this very hard decision when they're older about taking a professional path, or if they're taking like a musical path. It wasn't the case for me. I always did it for love. And I started taking a business role in a lot of like school clubs and things like that, because I've always had it in mind for numbers. I was told, as many young women are, that I was not very good at numbers, and wasn't very good at math. And in fact, was so bad at math that I should just finish all my math coursework out early. And if you think about those things, it doesn't make any sense. But it was just like, you're not very good at this, and so you should just skip to be done. And I think back to these like micro communications that I had with math and science teachers my whole, high school into college career, and how just these micro moments of being told that I wasn't very good at math, even though I had like an A+, like wasn't very good, like all these things just made me emotionally check out of those spaces, and then become very focused on language and very focused on history, which are my passions, and I love it, and fueled a life of travel and international business. But I think more critically, if I had just had a little bit of the right sort of support in math and science in those moments where things were getting hard and I wasn't really equipped with them, I probably would have been an engineer, because I do have that very math and logic brain. And what's interesting for me is like, I just crave balance. And I think this is why I've always loved economics, because everything makes sense to me. Supply and demand makes sense to me, all this. And so as I was doing a lot of performing arts, as I was doing like a lot of like humanities, I would always go to the business side of things and try to understand the why and the system of how things worked. And what that meant for me career-wise is that I started building more and more systems, and then I started building systems. I started building computer systems. I started building, P&Ls and different structures, and really wanted to understand the physical flow of goods, the physical flow of, how money works internationally and how everyone gets paid. And then I sort of morphed this into a career in consumer, because it was like, well, why? Why does a person do this? And I think the human behavior behind business has always fascinated me. If somebody doesn't pay a bill, why don't they pay a bill? Is it because they're a bad person, or is it something else that's going on? And how does that work in a system? And how do we track it in a system? And how do you communicate back to the person? If somebody shops online, why are they shopping online? How else do they meet the brand? How can we support them? What other needs do they have? Where do they want to try the product? Is it serving their needs? And this really turned into a robust career in technology and supply chain and finance, and then eventually in like e-commerce and commercialization, because I like to think about the world as a system, and bringing this like deep empathy for the consumer to these big consumer problems around health and wellness and nutrition and mental health and all these other big pieces. It's really served me to be underpinned by this very rational and logical understanding of how the rest of the business works. So it all feels really linear to me. On a resume, it looks chaotic for sure. But it all feels really linear to me. And I truly believe that every step prior to this one leads to this one. And I think that, for everyone, and you can lift your head up and say, how do I let my last choice inform my next? And how do I make a meaningful life out of the choices that I make, instead of just feeling like I'm on, a track, or I have to continue to do one thing. And I've always had that entrepreneurial sort of mindset. Yeah,
clearly. And it's really so interesting to hear you connect all those dots in the way that you just did, because it's really sort of inspiring to hear that this idea of everything, of the system, there is a system, there is an order, and how that led into you being interested in supply and demand. I mean, I see that all makes a lot of sense. And I'm so curious about is where and also I don't want to skip that how you empathize with the consumer, and you question their decisions, right? Or their non-decisions. And then of course, filling in all the dots with data. Amazing. What I'm really curious about, in addition to all of this, is where you grew up in a medical practice, so I could see some of the wellness, of course, being inspired there. But where the food and health and wellness piece entered into this, because you take all of this passion that you have and you bring it into that. If I'm hearing correctly, your first passion was really the numbers and the business and the order. And then you're bringing it into the health and wellness ecosystem. How did that happen?
Well, so it's kind of interesting because it feels so logical to me, but it almost feels like a systemic shock. So I grew up in a household where everybody took vitamins, and we were always talking about health in different ways. My mom cooked very healthy food for us. My grandparents lived well into their late 90s, eating a ton of vitamins and going to Mexico to get the sunshine and all this good stuff. Yeah. But all of that wouldn't have anything to do with anything that I'm doing, except that when I was 21 years old, my dad was diagnosed with a stage 4 glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive brain cancer, and then he passed.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And, here's the thing about being 20 and 21, right? It's like this huge identifying moment for you. And for me to lose my dad, who I was very, very close with, I'm a younger daughter. I feel like younger daughters and dads always have the tightest relationships. But we were very close, and he was a huge sort of impact in my life, not just on what I was doing, but also how I would do it. He had a really strong moral sense to him that was not religious moral, but sort of what's right, do the right thing. And I was a terrible teen for sure. You could just fill in the blanks. I was a terrible teen. And he would always be like, Ellie, come on. Right. And just a little bit of that, what's good, do it. And so when he got sick, and I actually was so lucky, I took time off from school to go be home with my family at that time. It was amazing. I wouldn't regret that ever. And I think it's part of the reason that I've been able to turn the grief and the trauma out of his passing into like positivity for my life, when a lot of people can't ever escape that. So I feel very privileged.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I sort of became, exactly as a 21-year-old, I'm like, I don't want to die of cancer. Like, what an awful death. He's 55. That's like terrible. I've got a lot of life to live. And so I went to Hopkins and I was like, I don't want to die of cancer. What do I do? And they were like, well, if you smoke, stop smoking. And if you drink, stop drinking. But you're a college student, so you probably drink. So, just like do your best and we'll see you in like 40 years. And like, you really can't do anything else. And I was just like, that's not good enough for me. Because I was looking around, and this was like 2006, 7, 8 time frame. And I was looking around at the time when technology was moving so fast. And my God, it's moving so much faster now. But I felt it was moving so fast then. And we had this new access to data on the different ways that your body worked. And there was like, this is when they were just starting to tighten like EMR and like integration of different like medical data. And I was like, but like, there has to be a different way. There has to be people making progress against this. And I actually found Dr. Mark Hyman, who then was like a much smaller name. And he was doing a 4 a.m. PBS spot, Saunders Hall in Harvard type thing. And I've always had like really bad insomnia. So 4 a.m., that's like the perfect time slot for me. And he was talking about the body as a system. And it really resonated with me because I'd always just said like, I think there's more here. And he was talking about systemic inflammation and how if there was one part of your body that was inflamed, like all the other parts would have like ancillary inflammation, and it could look like a lot of different things. It could be brain fog. It could be muscle aches. It could be all these things. And I bought his book, The Ultra Metabolism. This was before Amazon. I actually purchased a physical book that I actually wrote down in. It's like, I feel like ancient sometimes. And it was a really hard diet. It was like an elimination diet, but it did what a good elimination diet does. It eliminated a lot of inflammation. And for me, I had just like cystic acne my whole life. Nothing like too traumatic, but I've been taking spirulactone, which is like a hormone, for the better part of 10 years to keep it at bay. And it would flare up. And it all went away. Like in 10 days, 7 days, whatever it is. And I went to my best friend who was pre-med and is now a wonderful surgeon. And I said, oh my God, Ashley, like this crazy diet cleared up my acne. And she said, no, it didn't. That's not how it works. And I was like, no, it is, because I just did it myself. And she said, but that's not how it works. And it was just such an interesting moment of, hey, you are in a space that is a different space now. Like I believed and she didn't believe, and we're friends, and she's educated. It's just not like she's, some crazy person. And I realized that I was walking down a path in health and wellness from that moment on that was a different path. And so I started to lean into that path, and I started to do a lot of experimentation with my own diet. And I found the ketogenic diet very early, and I lost, the 15 pounds I could never lose as a college student, all these things. And all of a sudden I was so far down this path that the rest of the world seemed really foreign to me. And so I think a lot of people have this, and it's actually quite like lonely, especially like in those days where I would be the first person at a restaurant to ask if there was something gluten-free, and everyone would just roll their eyes. They'd be like, you don't have a gluten allergy. And I'm like, I don't have a gluten allergy, but something is wrong when I eat it, and I feel bad, and my face like explodes in acne, and like I feel awful. And the amazing thing about 2026 is that, in 2015, when I was saying this, people thought I was off my rocker and like high maintenance and go to LA. That's where all the crazy people are. I'm an East Coaster for life, like all this stuff. And now no one blinks an eye.
Right.
And that's because there's been so much movement in the movement of health and wellness to just bring more evidence forward on these systemic changes. And like, hey, a lot of them are related to diet. And so fast forward through this amazing career, I started at Deloitte Consulting. I was a consultant. Trust me, tons of alcohol consumed, no special diet eaten. And then I went to Gap Inc. I worked internationally, worked around the world. I worked with AB InBev at ZX Ventures, which is beer. I haven't lived like a super health and wellness focused life. Certainly there are people who dedicate, decades to like living a healthier life. I would say I lived an average business person's life.
Right.
But in 2018, when I was finishing up my time at ZX Ventures, and I proudly tell people that I drank 1,000 unique beers in 2018. It's like a lot of beers. Not individual glasses, but like different types. It's a lot. I was sick. Like, there's not a great way to say it. I sort of walked away from my ketogenic diet and my A/B testing with my body. And so I found this opportunity with Territory Foods to actually, be with people like me. And I remember Hillary, the woman who was the head of HR at that time, and she's incredible. She's an amazing entrepreneur. And she said, "You're one of us." And I felt for the first time like I was part of something. And I wasn't on my own with Mark Hyman's book that had annotated in pencil, 100 years ago. It was these people that were trying to build a movement around health and wellness. And Territory Foods came out of the paleo movement and it was born out of CrossFit. It was tightly connected to the fitness community. And I knew that I had found my space. And so for the next 10 years out of that, I built and enriched that space. I found the people who wanted to talk about nutrition and wellness and how we brought the puzzle together of fitness and wellness and mental health and nutrition and coalesced it into this amazing thing that allows people to find their personalized path forward, because not everybody is the same. And certainly men are different than women and, older versus younger. Sure. But every body is different and everyone deserves the ability to find the movement that works for them, the nutrition that works for them, and have it easily facilitated. And that's the amazing thing about where we are now is like all of that is much faster. Because now you can get personalized fitness, you can get personalized nutrition, and now it's about getting through the mire of like the noise to find the thing. But that's how it all happened for me, is like it was this personal journey out of this like trauma out of my life, but it really catalyzed by the fact that I was going at it alone. And then the pivot point is when I found just a piece of my community, and then I've spent the last 10 years really building that community and trying to put a face on the community, and especially the community around food as medicine, which has a lot of definitions, and a lot of people think like medically tailored meals and Medicaid and Medicare. But what I'm talking about is how do you use what you put in your mouth to live a better life and to heal your body and to find the things that work for you. And so I've proudly stood at the sort of forefront of that movement. First as a crazy person that nobody wanted to listen to, and now as a more middle of the road voice for sure. But building awareness and then connecting all the pieces together, because that's the powerful thing about a movement is, it takes a lot of work, and it's not going to be one company. It's not going to be one person. It's an ecosystem of people. And so it feels very organic for me because I've just dedicated most of my life to it now. And we still have a lot of work to do. It's not done.
No, it's not. And I just want to take a second to say thank you for all the work that you've done in this space, because I have, as you know, my history is really in fitness. But personally have been living this lifestyle. And I get it. Everything you said, I can so relate with that, with, being that one person, and people are like, oh, I've been all of it. So I so hear that. And it is beautiful to see it being more widely accepted now. Yeah. I am curious to hear your thoughts on sort of because I think this is important. I don't feel that this is spoken about enough, which is sort of like the marriage of Western medicine and food as medicine. And, the two I believe they need to coexist, right? And, if you have any thoughts on that, if you see any products or services that are sort of leaning into that direction, just anything that comes to mind, I'm curious to hear.
Oh, totally. I mean, first and foremost, what an incredible world we live in today, right? Because the barrier to entry in the consumer product space is quite low now, especially in the direct-to-consumer world, which means that there are so many more diverse companies being built that have incredible products that can bridge that gap between food as medicine, Eastern medicine, Western medicine, right? In terms of brand names, like there's an incredible company called Apothecary with a K that like everyone should check out. I have no affiliation with them at all, but the founder, she's amazing. The products are incredible, and they're sort of like naturalistic products to help you live a better life. So to replace drinking, to release, stress, everything like that. These businesses are all direct to consumer because there's no place for them in the traditional grocery store. There's no place for them in these other things, and it allows you to build great businesses. In terms of sort of leading voices between like Western medicine and food as medicine, there's more and more evidence coming out now, which I think is so powerful. On the commercial consumer side of the house, there's certainly places like Mark Hyman, who's been talking about food in the traditional Western medicine environment probably longer than anybody else. There's Dr. William Lee, who's done foundational research on how to eat to beat cancer, how to starve cancer with food. Incredible researcher and founder of the Angiogenesis Foundation, right? These are real MDs. Dean Ornish has an incredible diet around heart disease, like Liz Clotis, who's done actual real Mayo Clinic clinical trials to reduce cholesterol by 9% in 30 days by adding food products to your diet. Not eating a vegan diet, not any of this. Like, she has a business called Step One Foods that's like incredible. And the products are really good. And they're like snack bars, and they actually reduce cholesterol. The first time I tried it, even me as a deep believer, I was shocked. And I think like this is the amazing moment, right? Like, you can build these things. And like on the media side of the house, like Pedram Shoji, the urban monk, I think he brings together Eastern medicine and Western medicine really well. And that, you know, there's so many businesses, so many companies. This is why I say it's an ecosystem, because if you look at like maternal health and like postpartum and everything like that, there's like a subset of beautiful companies that have been built bringing Eastern medicine and Western medicine together. And how do you nurture nutrition for the woman and for the body and everything like that at that time? And if you look at, you know, like different pockets, there's all these different pieces. And now we have information saturation, right? And now it's about navigation. And then there's a certain level of, you know, what about the snake oil, right? Like, what about the things that don't actually work? And how do we build some sort of transparency? And this is where I think that consumer clinical and like consumer trials are so important now. And because you can fake consumer testimonials, you can put up a website that has 1 million reviews and it's not real. And so this is where the next generation of businesses that will be built will have things like really strong organic affiliate, because I tell you and you tell me. And instead of affiliate being affiliate like we'd see it in direct marketing, it's actually, you know, a real example.
Right.
And then this is where I think trials will become more and more important by just well-known sort of hospitals, institutions, as these things get more integrated. So all the way to like the world of, you know, how do we actually prove out the right disease or the right diet for like epilepsy prevention? You know, there's so much here. And so it's about bringing it together for sure.
Totally. And, you know, it makes me think about how, you know, I remember back in the 70s when I was a kid, my mom would give us echinacea, right, if we had a cold. And it was like she was a witch doctor. Don't tell anyone at school. You know, and now, I mean, there's just so much of it out there. And it's so crazy because, sure, I just dated myself, but it hasn't been that long, right? It's I'm 53. In my lifetime, there's been a complete, I mean, it's amazing how much information there is. And also what I love, too, is this will never cease to sort of amaze me, is how none of it's new. That's like meaning these remedies and, you know, the plant, all of it. We don't need to go into that too much, but like, a lot of it's all based on old knowledge and bringing it back to the forefront, bringing it into the future, which is where I'm going here for a reason. Yeah. You had mentioned AI when we were talking before starting this interview, and I'm curious, you had mentioned how there is a positive effect that AI will have on all this. So I'd love to hear you connect the dots there, because I am definitely one of those that's like, it depends on the day and the hour how I feel about AI.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm the same. I think AI, you know, on the macro level, I don't know. But for health and wellness, I think it's a net positive. And here's why. You can take your information and you can even just dump it into ChatGPT, right? And now you have a model that knows you. And what happens with that? I mean, that's the question, because ChatGPT has a lot of problems, but there's more and more private spaces that are being created, like open evidence or, you know, all these like sort of pocket solutions that are building information around one state, whether it's like cancer or inflammatory disease or anything like this, where you can sort of ask about your personalized. This is like the most nascent and most basic way to do this. Where I think AI is like especially interesting is how much faster it will make businesses grow, and how like we can build solutions that are just for specific communities. And like, I'll give you an example. So the whole concept of like B2B SaaS, you know, like just like SaaS products that you would buy, like QuickBooks or something like that to take it to the back end, is the idea that software is expensive and they have pre-built a nice, easy software solution for you, and you change your business to fit what their pre-built solution is. And the trade is that you don't have to maintain your own system, and therefore you give up a little bit of personalization. In today's world with AI, you could just build your point solution. You can build exactly what you need. And I think
pretty crazy.
It's crazy. And it really is going to change the way that businesses are built, because historically, to service a niche population, nobody does it. Like, I will tell you, the reason that nobody invests in like scaled, like postpartum nutrition is because somebody says the market's not big enough, right? Well, okay, why? Right? Well, okay, well, the market's not big enough because it's a temporary state. Okay, but why does that matter? Right? Why does it matter? And it's like, well, you have to like, the cost of acquisition is too expensive. Well, why is the cost of acquisition too expensive? Well, you have to reacquire. Well, why do you have to reacquire? Like, and you just have to like 5 whys, 25 whys, 100 whys it out. But with AI, you can reach these pocket communities much more scalably. And to reach a customer, you don't have to have a 12-person marketing team anymore. You can do it with 2 people, right? To build a scaled provider program where you're going through fertility clinics, you don't have to have a boots on the ground team any longer. That's like 10 people. You can do it with 2 people. And so all of a sudden your leverage on your investment as a business person can be much, much greater using these tools deployed well and with like the right quality control. And that's what I think is exciting. It's like, why not have, you know, custom printed gummy vitamins for prenatal nutrition for women going through IVF that are specifically tuned based on, you know, a 10-year model to help them get fertility results, which does exist, by the way. And like, why not?
I would assume so.
Yeah. Well, it's a very specific thing, but it's one
how
things
that,
I'm so excited about. You know, we didn't have any
cool.
fertility challenges. We're so lucky. But like, if I look at my cohort of my, you know, college friends and my social networks, fertility is a massive issue in the United States. And it's a very, very compounded issue. It's got to do with the gut-brain axis. You've got depression. You've got lack of movement. You've got PCOS. You've got endometriosis. Like, you've got 1,000 things. And I think about women's health a lot because I'm female. And and I look at this and I think about the fact that this population has been pretty much ignored for, you know, up until this point. And now we have the ability to build point solutions for them. Point nutrition solutions for personalized nutrition programs, point fitness solutions for fitness programs, point like gummy vitamins, all these other things. And the AI informs what that is, right? The AI enables you to take a big swath of results and say, people that looked like you, that did this, had this result. And that's so powerful to me. And it's about harnessing it correctly, but I think it allows us, it allows us to do something we couldn't do even 3 years ago. And that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And yeah, it's all about harnessing correctly. Yes. And, you know, and also, I mean, to your point, I mean, the thing is, what people like yourself are so important to this moment in time because you know how to do that. You understand how to do that. You know how to work with it. And it's really, I feel that's like, you know, having you out in the forefront of all of this is, we're lucky because you get it. And you're also able to see both sides of it, right? Yeah. So, you know, you understand why this needs to be sort of micromanaged correctly. But it is really exciting to think about everything you just said, because basically also, you know, just to dumb it down for a moment, not that you didn't, but even more so, is the affordability of it, right? Yeah. Like, that's the thing that we haven't really mentioned, which is in most of the cases, there's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of people that want to serve their communities in certain ways, but there's just no possible way. And now there is.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier than ever to start a business. And that's exciting. Yes. I used to say that like 5 years ago, it's easier than ever to start a business. It's truly easier than ever to start a business. Yeah. And that means more businesses will start. It also means more businesses will fail, right? Like, because not every business is worth it. And I have a whole knock list of awful ideas that I just keep on a scratch pad of ideas that I know are not good, right? Like, write them down, determine if they're good. But I think that's what's exciting is like, I've always spent a lot of time with young entrepreneurs, even when I myself was categorized as a young entrepreneur, just to say, like, how do we serve each other so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I made, right? Totally. Like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, how do you just prevent the people in your ecosystem, your network, from making the same mistakes you made? And is there a way you can sort of level them up? And this is why, no matter how busy I've been, always have just like a group of people that I like mentor or spend time in their business with them, mostly because I just believe in what they're doing or believe in them and things like that. And it's because, you know, if we all build better, I really believe that the system changes, right? And running a business is so hard. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. It is so hard and things will happen, right? Good things and bad things. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. I hate to just say it like willy-nilly like that, but like, there's a lot of systemic factors that come into business success, and success is defined quite differently for everyone. But forging together and committing to building a healthier entrepreneurship environment and investing time with with mentor relationships, everything like that, it's a huge part of who I am, because I really believe that the rising tide raises all ships. And I also think that success is quite relative. I have to tell you a funny anecdote. I was talking to a female entrepreneur who we both know, and I was saying, well, you're like a scion in the space because you have like a successful exit. You're a female entrepreneur, a successful exit, and you're like one of the few. Right. And she said, she was like sort of shocked to hear me say it. And I was like, you are the role model. You're the role model. And she was like, she said to me, like we were just chatting. She was like, doesn't really feel that way. And I was like, and she was like, it's funny you say it's successful because it doesn't really feel that way. And I was like, snap out of it. You are the success, whether you like it or not. And I think for her, it was just sort of like when you live a lived experience and some things are good and some things are bad, and especially women, we take it on and we wear it like this mantle of perfection that we didn't achieve. This is why I say I'm not a perfectionist. The backstory to that is, like I said to my husband the other day, I'm not a perfectionist, because if I was a perfectionist, I wouldn't do things to 85% all the time. And he was like, and he said to me, that's like number one evidence that you're a perfectionist. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. I learned something about myself just a couple of weeks ago.
Just saying.
But anyhow, back to this woman, she's so focused on being 100%. And what does the successful exit look like for a venture-backed fitness company, right? That she misses the fact that she is the success because she's made it, to this far, and that she had the exit that looked like XYZ, and she leads the community in this way. And she is a leader. She leads the community. And it's just amazing. And I think that's where it's so powerful to have, she and I don't even know each other. I would call her a friend, that friend to be like, what are you talking about? Crazy? Like, it is you. And I would say it to her every time, I would say it to anybody. It's like, you have to take a step back from what you're doing and focus more on what you mean in the community. And so it's just kind of interesting because it's like, you have to focus on building something much bigger than what you are to have that level of success. And it's hard. It's really hard sometimes.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And I too, it's interesting. Excuse me. It's so important to the community. You're so right. It's so important because when you're in it, you lose the perspective. Yep. And you're right. There is something, I try not to get too into the male female roles. But I do think there is something also to being a mother, a woman, and in particular, sometimes I think a mother as well. Yeah. And this whole idea of success and sort of not seeing it the way other people do. There is something very interesting there that you just really brought up. And I think it's very important to recognize it. And, you also reminded me of something else that I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is say it to the person, right? Yeah. I think that, right, there's a lot of times where we don't. It's no, tell that person what you think of them. Tell them how you're impressed by them. Tell that person that you really thought what they said was powerful or inspiring or, we don't do enough of that. And I think also, that could be because sort of the mode of communications has changed quite a bit in the last 5-6 years. And so it's become just sort of how we communicate has just changed. And I think we're sort of relearning that now. Yeah. And, so this constant reminder, no, it's not just a thumbs up, right? It's not just a sharing their post. It's actually pick up the phone or even if you have to write it, but say it somehow, just say it. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you. Because it's really important.
I think this is also we lived through a pandemic and that is incredible. Yeah. Right? I think sometimes the weight of the pandemic really hits me, the sadness, but also just the sheer fact that we lived through it and how lucky we are. But then I think as women, we're often trained not to say what we think unless it's like pushes the narrative further, right? And that's like, it's got to be like this like super intellectual, like look at me moment. And it's like, if you show up to a place, you show up to a dinner, you don't know anybody. Like as a woman, I don't know if this is the same for men. I honestly don't. But as a woman, right. And maybe it's just me, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. The first thing I think is, how am I dressed versus everybody else at the table? And the first place comes from a fear that I'm not dressed appropriately, either too formal or too casual. Then the second thing is, do I look nicer or the same level of nice as everyone at the table? And I think like, it's just an interesting, like, where do I sit in this like slotting, like level? Well, just like toss that out. Right. I mean, I think it's really hard to toss things out like that, but like do it, but then just like, who cares? Right. And it's like, sit down next to the woman next to you and have an authentic, wow, I really like your dress. You look beautiful. Like that's incredible. Right. And I think like to not bring like a competitive, I'm obviously like a very type A person and like my brain moves really fast, but like to harness that competition in a positive way and like compliment somebody else and authentically feel that way or call something out that is authentic is so powerful. And I actually think this is where men are a little bit better than women. I think men are better at being like, wow, bro, you really crushed it in this thing. And I think women are like a little bit less inclined. And I think it takes rigor, and it's definitely uncomfortable. But I think like, if you think about the net positive you're going to do on the world and the net positive in like the space that you're creating, like that's a huge way to build just strength. And I've never been, a rah-rah like person. I'm on tons of like networking groups and I never show up for them. I'm like this is my big problem. It's like not great at time management. But like, I think it's like about creating these micro spaces where you can really impact positive change in the people around you. And it's by seeing them in a different way than they see themselves or giving them that nudge at the right time and telling them they can do it. And just getting in there with the right message. And that's so important.
Totally. Like could be right. Like perhaps maybe number one quality of being a leader, at least one of the top 5 for sure. I mean, it's so important. And, I love that idea of, bringing it everywhere with you and always sort of just seeing things in that way. Like, how can I shift the narrative right now in a positive, I don't want to say positive makes it kind of Pollyanna-ish, but in a productive way.
Oh my God, but I am a total Pollyanna. It's so funny. Like I was talking to somebody, I literally wake up happy every day. Yeah. And like, I wonder sometimes if my brain is broken, the ketogenic diet may be too hard on your brain function for too long. Like I literally wake up every day very happy. And some days I wake up very tired because I'm an entrepreneur, but I wake up grateful and happy. I practice no yoga. I do no meditation. I like none of these things. Like everyone's like, oh my God, you must have an amazing yoga practice. Nope. Not at all. My yoga practice is sitting in front of an Excel sheet at 3:00 in the morning on the phone with my VP of finance, like working through a budget. That's my yoga practice. He's very good. He puts up with me. He's on the West Coast, so it's only midnight his time.
Right.
But it's like, I think, having true gratitude flow through your veins and that feeling of it will be fine, full stop. Like it will be fine. You're in control of your own destiny. It will be fine. Make it fine. Make it fine for the people around you is like a huge part of who I am. And I think, outside of a very few number of days in my life, I've been able to catalyze that strength. And my goal is to bring that strength to everyone around me. And in the darkest days, be that person for them.
That's beautiful. And, it really makes me think about my mind, just jump back to your experience with your father and being able to take that time and, at that young age, knowing I need to put things on pause. Yep. I need to go home. And, clearly that made a major impact on your life and was a decision that you even referenced as one that you have no regret around. Yeah. And so that's really beautiful. Wow. So, okay. You're just so incredible. And I'm curious now at this stage of your career, how are you working with people? And, how are you even mentioned networking, like how are you sort of getting yourself in front of people and finding places that you want to be involved in and support?
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, like, not being the CEO of a company. So I left my company at the end of last year, and then I founded a new company and then working on that and everything. But like this like concept of like self as the CEO is like a really interesting thing. I never would have been like a CEO is a huge part of my identity until it wasn't. And then I realized it was. And so it's interesting because, you know, as I shift around, as I work on new things and I'm in new spaces, you know, it's not been comfortable, but where I have fallen back to and where it's really like gotten me through it is like, I am someone who the second I meet someone, I think of how I can help them and who I know that can help them. And I didn't realize that not everybody is like this because it's so natural to me to try to build connections between people. And I've always done this. And it's sort of like, well, I know a person who does this and like, how can I help you do that? And now I feel like my brain is super charged in this. And I have this unhinged ability now to like go as fast as possible to create this connective tissue. And that is, honestly, there's truly nothing better than like making a good connection. And my dear friend David Holman, who wrote this incredible book called Orchestrating Connection, and it's like an Amazon #1 bestseller. It's already like integrated into Ivy League business school curriculum. It came out last year. He's an absolute crusher. He's had this hypothesis much longer than me. And he basically built his own very, very high value network early in his life through philanthropy and high net worth individuals and stuff. And he realized that there were people that would contribute to his network who were givers, and then there were people who would take from his network who were takers. And he quickly came up with a system for only working with givers. And his idea is if you bring givers together and everyone's just giving to each other, it's this massive virtuous cycle.
So
and the slicing is an absolute crusher. It's like an obvious thing, but he really codified it. And the first time I met him and he explained it to me, I thought, this guy's total lunatic. Like, who thinks so intentionally about their connections and their network? But he was basically like, I only engage with people who are givers. Not because I expect them to give something to me, but because I know that that's how they're wired. And he made me realize that I'm like a super connector who I truly love giving to my network and giving to the people I know and making those connections. And that has been the most rewarding thing because most people, when you give them something valuable, want to give back. And like the hardest thing is when I don't actually have an ask for them and I don't actually have something that I need. And I'm actually just, you know, giving because I think it's the right thing. And so that's where I've had a lot of fun. And being in the room, getting into the room, you know, it's a challenge, especially like if you're a, you know, executive of a smaller business or, you know, you don't have much network. Those are hard things to do. But if you can find the virtuous cycle of people that you can help with each other, your network will help get you in that room in different ways. And you would be surprised at the amount of people that want to support you and how wide your positive network is. And I think that's like the amazing thing is to just really think about it like that. And then think about the authenticity of like what you actually need to do to build that network and how you can actually facilitate those things. And, you know, as you're building a business, how do you build a business in that ecosystem? Because listen, when you're building a business, especially a venture-backed business, it's more than just you. You have stakeholders on your board, your shareholders, everything like that. The pressure is tremendous. And sometimes you make decisions that are not the best ones, right? Not the best for you personally, not the best for, you know, you mentally. I have made those decisions like all CEOs, but I think the way that you navigate through that is to try to make the best decision at the best time and you preserve that value chain. Let me give you a quick example. 2023 was probably the worst year of my professional life, but on paper it looked great. And I think that is very indicative, but it's like, I literally almost died. Like, I don't know a better way to say that. I almost died. Let me give you that on paper. I raised a $8 million round. My new business was running really fast. Like, I had 0% attrition of my team and I lost 30 pounds. Like, on the outside, that sounds like success. But on the inside, I was almost dying. Like, I was running myself ragged, you know, hence the 30-pound loss, like awful. My team had been through so much that the people that I had, I was, you know, every single day telling them the honest to God truth and begging them to stay with me. And they did, because they're great people. And that trust and that love was there even in the worst amount of time. It took me forever to get the round closed. You know, we almost stumbled out of business, like all these things. was the worst professional year of my life. But I have to tell you, it's like the success, it looks like success on the outside. And I think that's like the craziest thing. And one business relationship I had at that time, you know, I won't go into the details of the relationship, but we were friends beforehand. It was a complimentary service to our service. We shifted the business over, not because it was the right thing for the business, but it felt like it could be. And I had a high level of trust in my friend. And then it turned out not to be. And I didn't listen very well to my team at that time. And when we were making the change, you know, a lower level guy on my team said, Ellis, you know, I don't think this is the right thing. I think it's going to be really bad. I was like, this guy's going to take care of it. And quite frankly, he didn't. We had about $500,000 of waste at a time when we could not handle that. And, you know, it just took right out of our cash. And, you know, my team was right. The guy on my team was right. And my friend's business, you know, we were working with them. So what did I do? I didn't behave well. I stopped paying the bills. I just straight up stopped paying. And I stopped paying the bill to my friend's business. Bad business. Right. This is bad. You shouldn't do this. Bad. I immediately turned around to my team member and I said, I was wrong and you were right. You got to speak up louder next time. Like, I apologized. No, seriously, I just apologized and word on the outside. I was like, you are 100% right. And I don't have the subject matter expertise you do. Never let me make a decision like this again. Like, just, I trust you. And like, it doesn't matter what your title is in my organization. I trust you. Tell me and I will follow your guidance. And I wish I'd had that level of trust with him in advance. Anyhow, fast forward, I had stopped paying this guy. It was $500,000. You know, it was really tough. It's like, you can imagine the break in our relationship after something like that. And years later, years at this point, I reach out to him just to reconnect. And I said to him, he messaged me back and he said, you know, I don't know if I'm ready to reconnect because of what happened. And I just apologized. And I said, you know, I apologize for the way that I behaved at this time. It was a once in a lifetime, hopefully, situation. And I totally understand if you don't want to continue this relationship. And I respect that. But I would love if we could. And just owned it. Right? And we got on the phone. And I just headed off with an apology. And well, first I said, thank you. Thank you so much for answering my email and taking this phone call. And like, I just want to apologize for how I reacted. And I gave him some context, but like, I think there's a real difference between context and excuses. And we have to be very careful about these things. And so I framed it as like, this is not an excuse. This is context for you. And here's what I learned as a business person. And I just sort of laid it out for him. And, you know, I don't know if we'll do business in the future. I think our relationship is 50% repaired, but I think having those moments of how do I comport myself in this situation? And when I have made decisions that are not the best ones, because people make decisions that are not the best ones, how do you show up afterward? And not just giving up and not hiding from your mistakes is huge. And I think that takes a lot of rigor. And it was not my initial, you know, it was not my initial practice and it's my practice now. And I think it's an incredible practice to get into because you want to build this meaningful life that's full of these meaningful relationships. Well, you're not always going to behave perfectly. Like, make sure that you can own up when you don't.
Yeah. And that's a great point too. Thank you for sharing that. What a story. It's a great point to be wary of context versus excuses. Really strong point there because it's very easy to blur the lines.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. And good for you and good for him too, for being available.
He's a bigger person than I am. He's always been a bigger person than I am.
I don't want to say that, but you know, but just good for both of you. How about we put it that way?
Yeah.
For being able to communicate regardless of what happens next. You've been able to communicate and can both sort of move on with a little bit of a better understanding of what happened.
That's exactly right. The concept of context versus excuses. I think about my 6-year-old when she like doesn't want to do something. Like, not to be still so whatever about it, but it's like, you know, sometimes she doesn't want to do something because she doesn't understand. And so she's like, I didn't do this because like it didn't make sense to me. And sometimes she doesn't want to do it because she's watching Bluey, right? Like, and it's just a really big difference of context versus excuses. And like, the reason you give somebody context is because you're owning your mistake and you want them to understand a little bit more about who you are and why you made the mistake, not forgive you, right? Excuses are like, I did this because of X, Y, Z. It's like,
Yeah,
the reason you give it an excuse is you want to be let off. You want to be let off of the hook of accountability. And like, to
totally.
really grow, you have to hold yourself to a higher level of accountability. And I think this is where people who work in fitness, I think, get accountability in a completely different way. Because like in fitness, accountability is physical, right? And this is why people who are in fitness, ex-military, make such phenomenal leaders, because they can feel it. They can feel it in their muscles, right? And so I think it takes more when you're outside of those fields to feel that same accountability.
Yeah. And I also love that another lesson learned at home as well, using your 6-year-old as an example. It's great.
She's a great business leader already.
Yeah, already. So you had mentioned that you're starting a company, correct? Did I hear that correctly? Okay, so can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I've been working with a few friends on a cancer prevention startup. Very exciting stuff, because obviously very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Working in the space of digital health and really seeking to educate people who are younger around cancer risk factors. And, you know, so much of our cancer environment is tuned to people who are 60 plus. And then for some cancers a little bit earlier, you can get a mammogram earlier, so on and so forth. But if you start thinking about cancer when you're young, as I have, you can make small changes to your life that can really impact your cancer risk. And there's this misconception that it's just alcohol and, smoking. Those things are very impactful for sure. But there's other things in your diet, in your environment, getting radon tests for your home, things like this that actually do impact your cancer risk. And then the second piece, and what I'm really passionate about, is actually information and communication. And why that's important is, it's hard to be a person in 2026. It's just hard. It's hard to navigate information. It's hard to navigate the healthcare system, and it's hard to be afraid. And what we wanted to build was a space where users can come in and they can understand their cancer risk across 21 different cancers. Very simple, very easy, very inexpensive. And then we can give them a little bit of a blueprint of the things that they can or cannot. They don't have to make those change in their daily life. And then also a blueprint of how to talk to their doctor about it and what a personalized screening protocol looks like for you based on your genetic factors, based on your family history, based on your environmental factors, everything like that. And the education part of you and for your care provider is what I'm so passionate about, because there's not a navigator that helps you your entire life. This was one of the things that I think shocked me most as a young person, is like, after your parents stop taking care of you, no one takes care of you over you. Like, I just want somebody to take care of me. I wanted somebody to take a long view on my health. There's no one who takes a long view of your health except for you, and you're not an expert, right?
No,
and I think like that's
true.
Everybody just wants to be taken care of in this world. Everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be understood, and everybody wants to be taken care of. And so we're building in stealth, I won't say the name yet, we're building in stealth a cancer prevention app that actually starts to take care of you on your cancer journey and starts young and basically helps you understand your risk profile over time and doesn't push you towards anything crazy. I will tell you, there's tons of evidence that red meat is a carcinogen and that you shouldn't eat it. I love red meat. I can't give it up. I love it. No matter how much of a risk profile I have against cancer and breast cancer in my family, cervical cancer, brain cancer, I love red meat. I'm not giving it up. Why? Because one, it tastes good. Two, it's like culturally there for me. Like three, I just enjoy food, right? And so it's always about the puts and takes in your life. And, how do you live a life where, you're going to continue to eat red meat, even though it's a carcinogen? And how do you take a long view, and how do you get tested early and appropriately? So not just early for the sake of early. So that's what we seek to do. And then we're going to integrate other testing modalities. And this is very cool, because this is where we can bring in novel blood tests, AI tests that help you take a mammogram, inject it, and then we can see, clusters of cells that are precursors to cancer before they even form. This is incredible. And we're not building those technologies ourselves. We're building a platform where people can plug their technology in, because it's the other thing is there's so much incredible science being built, and there's such talented research teams, and they have no means of commercialization for these products. Providers are inundated with information they can't weed through. And so the other part that we seek to create is this commercialization platform for all these other sort of tests, so that they can be more received in the direct consumer world and they can expose their science to more people. And then the really cool thing, I'm talking about this too much. The very cool thing is that we can then do our own research on our population, and we can watch people from, we're sort of starting at 25, but to 25 through, 45, 65, take a long view and have all these parameters and all this history for them and watch their cancer risk evolve over time and know how they did. And our goal is to meaningfully shift the curve on cancer mortality in the United States.
Wow. Let's go. Wow.
Let's go, right?
No
Very
small
cool.
feat.
No small feat,
but an important one.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're telling me your app will take care of me?
I'm trying to take care of you. I'm trying to take care of you for cancer. I'm really interested in taking care of you for neurodegenerative disorders. I think like Alzheimer's and dementia is a really big, weight. I see an increase. There's definitely an increase in younger people getting cancer, colorectal cancer. I'm sure people who have colorectal cancer, as do I. Certainly breast cancer gets a lot of press. But there's like a lot of earlier cancer. But then, dementia and Alzheimer's, I think, is the next wave of sort of these things that used to be relegated for your grandparents when they were already in the nursing home. And now it's your mom, right? And that's scary. And it's coming earlier and earlier. And how do we understand the signs, but then also the things that we can do diet-wise? Diet impacts, like blood sugar impacts risk of dementia pretty aggressively. And how do we actually make those shifts early? So my first thing is I seek to educate people, not change their behavior, because I think everybody needs to be able to make their own decisions, but to educate them with information that is science-backed, that is clinical trials behind it, so they can really understand instead of just being fear-mongered. Because there's so much to be afraid for these days. Everyone's afraid. We need to create a better space.
Yeah, it's just so complicated. It's so complicated. And it's just like, you think you're doing the right thing with the annual mammograms after a certain age, but then it's like, no, the mammograms are what's causing the cancer. And, you think you're doing the right thing, in terms of like taking the right supplements to support brain health, but you're reading about this while looking at your cell phone and then seeing that, oh, actually it's the cell phones that are creating. It's just like
totally, and it's like it creates this frenzy and this fear, and like this is why you see just like a culturally shift back towards like a simple time, because people are like, okay, we don't know what it is, and like let's be real, it's a confluence of factors, of course, right? It's not one thing, and so when it's a confluence of factors, there's a whole group of the population that's like, let's just take them all out, right? Let's just go back, but we cannot go back. We are not Luddites. We are not giving up technology. Right. I think it's about, it's about finding the path of just the things that you can do that feel easy to you, that can make the small changes that lead to the big impacts in the long run. And, sorry for the world, but a lot of it is diet related, and all the things that are absolutely the most delicious things to eat because they're chemically engineered to be the right level of delicious to keep you eating, they are pretty bad for you. And by almost every measure. And so it's an interesting moment because, I've spent the last 10 years in like food and nutrition and personalized nutrition, everything. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a registered dietitian at all. I'm a consumer of food. I love Michelin stars, right? Like I love all these things, but it is about building enough evidence and building enough information and giving people the easy things to do to change their path forward and letting them do it. And like, as well as I do, you cannot change people's behavior without their buy-in. And you don't want to be an assault on who they are, right? So it's about finding a little bit more of a mid-path.
Yes, easing them into it. Yeah, I love it. So, all right, wow. So exciting. I can't wait to follow your journey with this
my stealth startup.
Business.
I feel very cool.
Is so exciting. But in the meantime, you're also working as a consultant, correct? Okay. Yeah. Yep. So we'll have to, is there anything currently that you're involved in?
Oh yeah. I'm involved across so many companies. And here's why. It's like, so I'm working on a cancer prevention startup, which is a very specific part of my brain. Yes. But I've spent so much time in food and nutrition and movement. And so there's all this equity that's not being leveraged appropriately. And so for me, I can't handle that. like good asset utilization. I'm an economist at heart. And so I look across the connections that I've made across my career and just who are the people that I think need help. And so I'm doing a ton of go-to-market because a lot of businesses don't know how to play in the world of food and food as medicine, or they want to do strategic partnerships and they don't know how to enter it. And it's my absolute privilege to like sit with a founder and sketch out their business. Earlier today, I was talking to a company that I'm not even advising, but they have a personalized nutrition sort of funnel, and then they sit on top of like an Instacart API, so you can get personalized groceries. And I got hit by an ad by them. And I was like, what is this? Like, I know everybody in personalized nutrition. Like, what is this? And I found the CEO on LinkedIn, and I sent him a note. And I was like, hi, I just got hit with one of your ads. I'd love to talk to you about your product. And we spent an hour on the phone, and I just shared with him my experience, right? And, you know, the concept of work is really interesting because, like, is that work? Yeah, totally. Am I taking, like, the work product or the product of all the work I've done and bringing it to him? Yeah, but, you know, he's a new startup. Like, why not? And maybe that will turn into work or sellable work as a consultant. I don't know. But it doesn't need to. Yes. I mean, what I really should do is take equity in all these companies, because then who knows? But it's just more like, it's just interesting because I really think about that entrepreneur, and if I can impact his life positively, I believe it will come back to me in some way. And maybe it's just that he builds this massive ability for people who eat a low FODMAP diet, which is a very, very restrictive diet, to be able to better access food. And maybe my role is to connect him with the other 10 people I know that build in the low FODMAP space so they can build together, right? And then it's like, this is the value of like a true builder ecosystem, is like, I've spent 10 years learning all these people. So it's like, low FODMAP is a pocket of a pocket of a pocket. No big CPG will ever build there. Nobody cares. The healthcare system doesn't even really care about SIBO and what, you know, that causes small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's a really debilitating disease. Still, nobody really cares. It's not big enough.
No.
That's not cancer, right? Right. And so I think this is where ecosystem plays a part in connective tissue. And then I do think this is where AI built businesses allows to go faster. So, so yes, I am consulting, and I'm always happy to take a look at anybody's business and try to manage my time better. And I spend a lot more time with some than others, and really helping a couple of businesses that are in the, you know, low 8 figures reach the mid 8 figures. Cause I think that the jump from 10 to 25 million is probably one of the hardest jumps that you can make. And from 25 to 50, another very hard jump. 50 to 100, it's not that it's an easier jump. Right. It's just that it's like a more scaled jump. And so I always explain it to people. It's like seed to Series A is like you have an idea and you're just starting to formulate it. Series A is the hardest round to raise, and it's the hardest business to operate, because it's like you have enough of an idea that you're ready to go, but it's not a system enough that you can actually put water through it. By the time you make it to a scaled Series B and you're like a over $50 million business, you are actually about optimization of the resources that you have and putting as much water through your system as possible, and then building your next S curve, because you got to build for the next one. Otherwise you're going to get caught with your pants down. But that is a known growth challenge. You know, there's 100 Wharton MBAs that get minted a year that like understand how to do that. And the seed, you know, that's ideation. That's more like invention and everything. But this middle stage of Series A businesses, I just truly think they have the worst, because it's so hard. And so this is where I like to spend my time. I like to spend my time with those. That
makes a ton of sense. I mean, clearly with what comes so naturally to you is that phase.
Well, and there's also less venture capital available there now. We've seen a systemic pullback in venture capital.
Say, that's the other thing.
Across everything. Yeah.
It's, how do I put this eloquently, but a little more of a fine-tooth comb, you know, when you're going out to raise, and then there had been. So having somebody like you on their side is, it's got to be a game changer. I mean, obviously it is, but it's super important, because you can position the company in a way so that they're ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can actually raise the funds.
Yeah. And I try to be. I think what's interesting about the state of venture capital, you know, heading into 2026 is that we saw a lot of people deploy heavy capital in 2021, 22, and then pull back in 23 and 24. And so that means there's a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines. But where it's getting deployed is older companies. It's getting deployed into growth stage. And a lot of the former Series A investors are now B and B+. And it's because they want de-risked positions. And then there's still a good current of people that invest in seed, because there's a understanding that, you know, big ideas have to be incubated nascently. But the Series A investors are like looking for something different these days, and few and far between. And I'm seeing these monster rounds, like people raising like a $10 million seed. It's like, Jesus Christ, like, why did you raise all that money so early? And so I think this is where having the experience really helps, not as something to learn from, but just another perspective around the table, because it is very hard to run a venture-backed business, and you need as many allies as you can get. I think that's what's
Totally.
the challenge.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Phew. Yes. And to all of this, there's just, I cannot wait to listen back to this episode. I'm so excited.
Absolutely.
Ellis, I would love to take a moment. First off, share with us where we can find you, where everybody can find you, please.
Well, you can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I feel very lame saying this, but normally when I give my bio, it's like this horrible LinkedIn advertisement because I've found so many roles through LinkedIn. It's a huge network for me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm at Ellis-Singer, my maiden name. And then you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Ellis_McCue or Ellis McCue, maybe one word. And I'm always just sort of, posting a little bit. I guess I'm on Twitter, X as well, but just trying to like build businesses, meet people. This is why LinkedIn is my main jam. It's because it's a lot of business content, but find me there. Watch me for my venture-backed startup in the cancer space. And then my biggest thing is, just reach out. Like that's the biggest thing. I'm here to talk with people, especially in health, wellness, fitness, and nutrition. Mostly because it's where I have my expertise, right? Like this is where my expertise
100%.
is. I'm always happy to jam. And I love to hear what people are building, but what I really love is when things aren't going well. I think that nobody talks about the hard stuff when it's not going well. And I really, because I value my time and I value the time of the people I talk to, if everything is going well for you and you just want to tell me about your business, that's great. And I'm happy to have that conversation. But if you need my help, like, let's talk about that. Right? Let's lead with the thing that I can actually help with because I'm here to help. And I think that's a bit of a different mentality. A lot of people want to, know what they're going to get and be dazzled and all these things. And like, for me, I would rather just hear what you need because if I can't do it, I want to save you the time and hopefully I can find somebody that can help you with it. And that's a little bit of how I'm wired.
And that's just great guidance because I know in my own career, that's a mistake I learned over many, many times was not reaching out, not communicating that I needed help. And I now share that today with people. No. You got, don't be afraid. Ask for help. Put yourself out there. It's okay. But, it's beautiful to know that you at this stage of your life have the hindsight to know how important that is and that you create the space for founders and entrepreneurs and people in business in general.
And big corporate. That's the other thing, like with my background, because I was at big CPG for a long time, there's this moat between the world of startup and the world, especially in food, the world of startup and the world of big food. And the moat exists for lots of reasons, but like ideological reasons, market reasons, commodity pricing reasons, like all these things. But the interesting thing is that the worlds have been separate for a long time and now they're converging because the catalyst is really around health and wellness entering the mainstream. And you can see it ripped from the headlines around San Francisco suing for ultra processed foods. You can see it in General Mills' quarterly results. You can see it happening. And a lot of this is catalyzed by the GLP-1 movement, weight loss drugs, because people are thinking so much more about what they put in their body. Fitness, the world of fitness is thinking about fitness quite differently with GLP-1s as well. Big systemic level shift here in the US, probably bigger than the pandemic, which I think is wild. I sort of thought we were done with like systemic change for like my generation. It was like, it's going to be the pandemic that changed everything. I actually think it's the GLP-1 drugs.
That's a good call.
It's huge. Yeah. And so where I find myself a lot these days is actually helping like larger organizations bridge the gap as well, because they're at a position where the worlds of, the BCGs, the McKinseys, that's just like this self-serving ecosystem that just talks to itself about big stuff. And they need a strategic partner to help them understand where, the health and wellness world has gone, which is quite fast and far away. And, there's like just faster ways to get there. There's lighter ways. You've got very smart people at these big companies. It's not like they don't have the ability to understand. It's that they're not given the information and we're not thinking systemically. So that's also been a lot of fun because as somebody who's sat in what I call alt wellness for a long time, like I'm a big believer in systemic level change and that the way we make every American healthy is through access, and access comes through distribution points, and distribution points that are not just, expensive D2C distribution points. It comes from Dollar General for food, right? You have to impact it the whole way.
Totally. Going back to you understanding systems and how, that's really at the core of not to put words in your mouth, but from what I'm hearing, really at the core of what you do and what kind of is your passion is like figuring out the system and order and how to then apply that in beneficial ways. Yeah, super powerful. And like, what a cool superhero talent. So, which leads me to ask you, before we sign off, Ellis, is how do you define success?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
I think, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think that success for me is looking around, like circumspect, like looking around at my community, my family, my team, my investors, you know, your full community, and the look they're giving you back. And like, what is in their eyes, right? And it's like, success is the look that I get from my daughter when I make a perfect Christmas for her every year, right? Like, success is the look of my investors when I tell them that, you know, even though we're almost out of cash, I'm going to raise the money, right? Success is the look from my team when we are going to launch a new feature and I'm pushing everybody hard, right? Success is really relative. And I think it's like, look around you and look at the faces of the people that you are accountable, that are accountable to you, and what is reflected back at those faces. And if it's trust, I think that's success. If it's trust and it's love and there's some kernel of positivity, then I think that's success. And if those faces are looking at you blank, I think that's a bigger indication than anything that you need to take a step back from what you're doing and saying, like, am I building the right way and the right things? And like, am I being true to myself? And like, am I actually doing the things? And maybe, you know, rethink things, but it's like, what's reflected back at you from those people?
Whew, that is so powerful. I couldn't have scripted that better. I mean, that is so beautiful. And you know what I love too is like, and if you're getting the blank stare back, it's also, and you touched on this, I just want to like harbor on it for 1 second. It's like, yeah, am I even in the right space? Like, am I talking to the right person? You really have to reflect. Like, because I just want to say, like, what's so interesting about that to me and why it's so meaningful is because I would have the tendency to go, what am I saying that's not right? But really the truth is maybe it's just not the right recipient for what my message is. And that is a really cool take on defining success.
I love it. Amazing.
This is the best. I am so grateful to Deborah for introducing us, and I will make that super clear when we post this interview. She's the best.
She's truly the best.
She really is. And I'm so happy to know you, and I can't wait to get this out there. And thank you for being so open and honest and sharing all this awesome stuff. And yeah.
Amazing. You're the best. Thank you so much for having me. You are emblematic of success. Like, I don't know a better way to say that, but it's been a true joy, and I just want to thank you because this was awesome and you're fantastic. It's great to know you.
Back at you, and to the Rockettes.
To the Rockettes. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. Honey. I'll talk to you soon. Happy holidays if I don't talk to you. Cheers.
You as well. Enjoy.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.